This is all gonna be recorded. Students have told me that later on they download the video and they just follow along and do their thing. And that makes it a lot easier to actually get through everything. Step by step. Who remembers that song? Step by step. This is we old. New Kids on the Block. That's some old school shit. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with all this stuff now. I'm gonna share my screen. I'm recording. So this is my drawing. We started last week, right? This is actually a different one I did because I don't know what happened to it. But it's the same image. And the first step of what I'm doing is I'm just cleaning up the image. And then I'm going to set it up so when we bring it into Illustrator, we can use it kind of like a coloring book and we can add color. I'll start with that. And then I'll also do it. I think I won't have enough time to show you how to add a background image. So here, I just brought in my scan and it is sideways. So I'm doing a few things here. I'm gonna go to image rotation. I'm gonna rotate it clockwise. Bam. Make it smaller. So there's a lot of tools here on the side. I'm gonna leave it for you to explore. But the most important ones that we're gonna use are gonna be like the move tool, which is the regular arrow tool. The select tool, which allows you to make selections in a box, or this lasso tool, which allows you to select just areas. And you do all this using your mouse. I think most of this we're doing is very basic stuff. But what we have right now is my drawing in black and white. And what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm going to go to adjustments and go to levels. And here what I'm going to do is you'll see is I'm just going to make this look more black and white. Right now it looks kind of grayish, right? It's a very, very dark gray, but it's, and you see how there's some pencil lines there? I had done this to like maybe add some more texture to it, but I didn't like it. So what you'll see in this is how I'm kind of, is washing away. What I'm doing is I'm bringing up the contrast to make your black inked image look blacker.
Where did you go? You went to
To image and then levels. And so I'll do that again. So you go to image and then levels right here. There's a lot of quick keys here. Like Apple L basically will take you to levels as well. But just since we're beginning, go to Apple, you go to image and then adjustments and levels. And I just play with these little sliders. I bring it in from I move the one on the right, I move it into the left. And then the one on the left, I move it towards the right. And you see it got darker, right? So you see it again. And then I click OK. And then, so you can use this little tool right here called the zoom tool. Click on that, and then you can use that to like zoom in. Another thing that you can't see because you can't look at my keyboard is I'm holding down. Well, actually, I'll show you how to do it. So I zoomed in using the zoom, the magnifying glass. I'm gonna use the hand that looks like stop, but it's just the hand for moving stuff. So I'm gonna click on the hand, and it allows me to move my image around, which is kind of helpful. You can also hold down the space bar. Like if you have the arrow selected, or if like in this case, we're gonna use the eraser tool right here. Remember, whenever you hover over a tool, it'll bring up this little like suggestion and little kind of tip on how to use the tool, what it is that you're looking at. And you can even watch a quick video, which we're not doing, but for people who really like to get into it. So I'm gonna click on this little tool and you see it's really small. So I can, actually, what did I click on? Eraser tool. Oh, actually, scrap that. Getting ahead of myself. Here, I'm actually going to use the brush tool. So go to a brush tool. There'll be times like this in this video where you're like I'm saying, start doing something and then it's going to be wrong. but I'll fix myself. I just did something, I was just adjusting something on mine, so don't worry about that. You should be. But you see how like I have a big giant circle? That is basically your erase. So remember, there, you know, if you erase stuff, you can always go to undo. Just like Microsoft Word, this has undo, and you can do a lot of undos here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this eraser smaller. And so you see here's the size, and you can see the circle, how it's huge. Make it smaller. You see now it's real small. Now it's bigger. Now it's even bigger. Good enough to erase what I'm trying to erase. Make sense? If you have any questions while I'm going over this, like raise your hand, or because I'm looking down, just say, hey. That's a good question, right? Because the eraser, because in this mode of grayscale, it doesn't work the way I want it to work. That's not to say it's wrong, it's just that it's not working the way I want it to work for our purposes. And I'll show you once we're in another mode, how the eraser tool works. That's a good question. Erasing this, erasing this. The other way to do this.
Are you erasing it or just painting it in white?
Well, I'm painting it white. But it's kind of like I'm whiting it out. And since it's, you know, technically it's painting it over, I call it erasing. You see, I went too far. That's where you do Apple Z, Control or Command Z. People don't know what Apple is nowadays. The other way to do this, as I said, is sometimes we could use this lasso tool and we can select some stuff. Like I'm gonna select this. Actually, I'm gonna go down here. I'm gonna select all this crud. Because you see, I think it's from a bad scan. And you can see all this crap in here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do something that you can do. And this is the quick keys, Command, Delete. Oh, and you see it's gray. So this is a teaching moment here. So when you look at over here, these little boxes, these are the colors that you have available to you. And usually it's defaulted black and white, and you can always go back to your defaults, clicking this little icon right next to it. And then you can switch them. So like now, let's see if I click, I'm gonna undo what I had done. And so now if I do it again, oh, now it's black. You understand why it's black? Because the color in the background is black. That's not very intuitive, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch the color down here in the palette for the white one to be in the back. And now I'm going to do Command Delete again. Does that make sense? Now I'm going to select this again, do Command Delete. White is selected over here, and boom. I can go back to my brush tool. Oh, but you see, if I'm brush again, now it's black because this needs to be black or white over here. And so I'm going to switch this up. Yeah. Switched it too many times. There you go. So another quick key that you can use is Command minus and Command positive to make it bigger. Command negative, like the minus sign at the top of your keyboard right next to the 0. And I think this looks all pretty good. So now that I have it all black and white, you know, depending on your on how your drawing looks, you might need to clean it up a little bit. Like mine was pretty simple to clean up, so. So now what I get to do here is I'm going to make it a bitmap image. And so here's the thing to understand. This is very much a Photoshop thing, and there's multiple types of color of images that you can have in Photoshop. You can have color images. And when it comes to color, I know this is going to be a lot kind of going over your head, but you can have a CMYK image, which is if what you use if you're sending it to like a professional printer, means that it gets printed in cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and that's a whole printing process I'm not going to explain. But trust me, that's how it works. And then you have RGB, which is mainly for screen. It's red, green, and blue. And that's the way a screen basically renders colors. It's somehow bringing together red, green, and blue. And I'm not going to explain all that, but for our purposes, oh, and there's actually also grayscale. And so grayscale, just like, and you look at this grayscale, RGB, CMYK, and there's these other ones that maybe we'll get into, but aren't necessarily important here. And there's grayscale. And so these three are what's called continuous tone. And so by continuous tone is imagine a color like black or blue on one end, and on the other end you have white, right? Or you have yellow or red, right? So if you have blue to yellow, somewhere in the middle it's going to be green, right? But think of it as a spectrum, as they say sexuality is. And so when you get into that spectrum, seeing if y'all listening, there's basically a continuous tone that's happening there, right? And so when you think of gray, you're like, well, gray is, you go from different shades of gray, right? And those are continuous tones. What we're getting into is this thing called bitmap, which is what is basically just black and white, right? And I'm going to show you what I mean, because I think if we get in here, you see how we get in here, there's a little bit of gray, and there's some black, and there's some areas where it's white, but you can see like along the edges of the black, there's some gray. And what we're going to do is once we go into mode, to change the mode, bitmap. And before that, I'm actually going to do one more thing, because I want to make sure that we're all in the same. So the way mine set up, mine I have printed, I scanned it at home. But I'm going to do the same thing here. What I'm doing here is I'm going to change this. And actually, let's look at it, because like, let's say yours is at 72 when you open it up, which is if you scanned it upstairs, it'll most likely say 72. What you want to do is make sure that resample is clicked off. And so let's say I'm going to change this to 300 again. Sorry, I'm like kind of jumping from one thing to another. And mine is huge. This image is huge because I have a really nice scanner at home. So now that it's at 300, I'm going to click on resample. And so now the thing that happens is when you have resample clicked off is that all three of these that I'm pointing at on the screen are connected. So if I change the resolution to 150, the size changes. And what stays the same are the pixels. I know that's a lot to understand unless you understand digital, tools and shit. But I'm going to change it back to 300. Now that's it. I'm going to click off that and click on that resample. And now I want it to be, I have it at 300. Oosh, you see? I'm going to click off resample and I'm going to make it to, let's say 13. Since we're working on an 11 by 17 artboard, and I'll get to that in a minute, that's good enough for what I'm doing. So there we go, 13. It shrank a little bit. I'm gonna go back to like being at this kind of, let's see. You see, like even when you look along the black line, there's a little bit of gray in there. So what we're gonna do now is go to mode, bitmap. And what we want is for it to be at 50% threshold. If it's on this one, if it's on diffusion dither or whatever else it could be on, click on that drop down and make sure it's at threshold. And this should be set at the resolution that you have at 300. So it's okay. And then just click. Okay. And you see how it went from being a little bit of gray in there to being like just hard black and white. And there's a little bit of the stair step, which you see, right? It looks very like jagged. That's because I'm super extremely 500% zoomed in, right? So don't worry about that. Once it gets into Illustrator, it'll be a lot more smoothed out. We see what we have now is just a black and white drawing. Going back to the image size, just because I want to make sure that people don't kind of freak out later on once you're watching this and you're looking at your image. If the resolution isn't at 300 when you go to 13 inches wide, that's okay. It's not going to kill your thing, right? So just, it might be a little bit different. It might be 300 at 12 inches wide. Should be okay. The lowest you should have your resolution at is at 200. I know there's a lot, because you've never done this before. Yeah,
Image, mode, and try to complete that, and let it's grayed out. So I need something-
oh, okay, this is a good one. A good question. I think mine was already at grayscale. So when you, this is a good question. So when you go to, I'm gonna actually go back. And I think this is what's happening. I'm gonna go to RGB. And so when you go to when you're in RGB mode and you see bitmap, it's not selectable. So you have to go to grayscale first. And then bitmap will be available. Good question. Sometimes like I do, this is like second nature to me, so I'm sorry. That makes sense? Yes.
So I feel like different layers.
Oh,
I don't-
you're advanced. All right.
So if I, that's still like plan from the. What's the difference?
Oh,
between
wait.
having grayscale and- So-
Okay, so what you're asking is, so the reason that we're doing this is that so in Illustrator, we can add color behind the shapes. And what you're trying to do, can I look at your different layers real quick, since you're like right here?
Yeah, it's because of that.
Yeah.
I don't normally use Photoshop, like, so I can actually use like. The
So it might be a
layers that I-
special, you're gonna be a super special case, so don't worry.
Like, can I just stay on
Yeah,
Photoshop?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. All right, all right, all right. Now let's come back. So anybody here who's actually already just using Photoshop to create their poster and knows what they're doing and doesn't like, and is just like, I don't need to listen to you? Just you. No, it's all good. No, I mean, this is real. Anybody using their iPad and whatever program they have to do that? Okay, so what tool serves you best is a tool that you should use. This is for whoever, and this you should pay attention because you'll learn something, hopefully, maybe. And so to me, it's like if you're using another tool to do it, that's cool. I don't think this should be a process where you have to use my process. This is just a process. If you don't have a process yet, this is a good process to use. I know that now, like a lot of people who have iPads and have all those programs that are on there can like easily use them to create images. So I'm not gonna like stop you.
But you are an expert, so why wouldn't you? use it?
Well, her image is already halfway done. I mean,
Obvious.
yeah. So I'm not gonna, yeah, it would be just a lot of work to redo everything you've done. I'm not gonna put you through that torture. This is fun, right? Okay, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right. Okay, so now that we have it in a bitmap, right? I went back to bitmap. Boom. As black and white. A little bit of stair step in there, but so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to File, Save As, and I have my folder over here. And right now, if you can see up here, it's PSD. And you see this little, it might be, depending on how you scanned it in, might be a JPEG, but it's gonna ask you to probably, once you have it in bitmap, it's gonna default to save it as a PSD. Don't do that. What I want you to save it as is a TIFF. And I'll show you why a TIFF, because it's basically transparent when we get into Illustrator. And so I'm gonna select TIFF in the format dropdown. Okay. And then I'm gonna name it something, main drawings. .tiff. There we go. And so For right now, we're done with Photoshop. And then I'm gonna move this over to Illustrator. So with Illustrator, we're gonna go through a few different things. And so people who have already started working on their image in other programs, this is where you still need to pay attention and to figure out something, because what we're doing here is for our purposes, we're gonna start a new template, a new document. And when this window comes up, there's all of these options. We have to pay attention to is width and height. What we're looking for is width is 11 and height 17. And then you click OK, and it creates your document. And so let's see. I'm actually gonna close that because I don't think I shared this over here. Let's check something. Illustrator. Okay. So again, make this big. File, new. Remember, when you go and to create a new document, it needs to be 11 inches wide by 17 inches tall, width and height. Set that up, create. Click create, and so now we have our artboard. There's a couple ways of bringing in the image. And I know this is the best way to do it on a Mac. Is where, like, if you find your image. Where did I save? All right, so when you're over here in Illustrator, there's two ways of doing this. If you find your image on your desktop, I don't know if you all know drag and drop. You can just drag it into here. You can also go to File, Place, you can find your image here, main drawing. And then it like comes up small, and then you click, basically you place it in here. Right? And so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna shrink it a little bit. And I'm gonna show you another thing, because what we're doing here is we're trying to create a poster. We're creating our layout board. This is where we're gonna do our design. And so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna go to, actually what I'm trying to do here is find my rulers. If you don't see your rulers, click Command R, quick keys, Command R, and the rulers will come up. You see how the rulers came up? They come up or they go away if you click Command R. And so again, like I'm trying to do half inch on each side. And so I know this is 1 inch, so it's about ½ inch, right? And I know how to do this because I do this all the time. But if you don't, right? So again, there's this magnifying tool right here, zoom, click on that. And now you can like zoom in over here. And again, you can use the hand to move around. And now that you can see like the ½ inch a lot better, a lot clearer, boom, ½ inch. And here's the one that's a kicker. In the bottom, you don't want ½ inch. So if you use the hand again, you can use the hand to move stuff around. You're moving around, so remember that. That's why I'm moving around, it's not just magic. Down at the bottom, I want 3/4 of an inch. So it's weighted at the bottom. And so now I'm gonna go to my wide arrow. Actually, there's 2 arrows here. There's the direct selection tool, which I call the white arrow. And then there's the gray arrow, which is just a selection tool. I'm actually gonna use the selection tool. Come in here, see, this is kind of where I want this dude to be. And I'll make him a little bit bigger. I want him to take up more of the area. And so what I'm gonna plan, I'm gonna do something simple here. I'm gonna, like, you see how he's hanging off the board over here? We'll take care of that, but for right now, these, again, those lines that I made are the margins of your poster. So remember I said the reason we make it a bitmap is so it's transparent? What we're gonna do, I'm gonna start by putting a little bit of color in here. And although I'm starting with black, I don't want it to be black. Tool. If you look up here, if you go to Windows, there's all of these tools that you have in here, these toolboxes that you have in here. And mine already set up a lot on the side over here. So I'm just clicking on the little paint palette, which brings up my little color selector tool. If you don't see that on your Illustrator, go to Window and then go to Color. See, it turned mine off and now I'll turn it back on. Boom. Make sense? And so I made a box. I use the tool, the box tool, the rectangle tool over here. Boom. I selected it. I kind of use these guides up here to know where make my box is black. I'll make it light blue, but it's on top of homie. So now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go back to my gray arrow tool. Make sure I'm selecting my blue box. I'm gonna go to Object. I'm gonna go to Arrange, and I'm gonna go to Send to Back. That's what I meant by it's gonna be transparent. And so now what we can do is like, I'm gonna move this guy a little bit to the right. So I'm using my little arrow tool just to move it, little by little. Boom, I like that. So right now I'm gonna do another box. I'm gonna do a gray box. Now I'll do a red box. Boom, red down here is gonna be black. Now I'm gonna make this one red. And so like you can over here, like you can go and, how do you make red? Does anyone know how to make red? And here it's all the magenta and all the yellow. And then you can do different shades. You know, this is where you can play with the colors. It's more of a blood red right there. And so you see what's going on here is that we have different layers. We have the red that's in the front, the black that's in the middle, and the blue that's on the bottom. And so there's another, you know, once we start getting into playing with multiple shapes, it's gonna get confusing and hard to manage. So that's why we also have this tool right here called this layers. Oh, damn, bring this over here. You have layers. And so in the layers palette, you have all of these things. Your guides, I'm gonna lock them, lock your guides because you don't need them to move. And these are basically, you can see if I turn them off and on, you see how the guides went away? Now I brought them back. It's like I'm playing God. You can click on each of these things and they turn them on and off. And then you can also move them. So you can move this rectangle to the top. Or you can move it back to the bottom. I can move this one up here. Or I can move this one up here. Right, this is basically what we're doing. Now there's another thing here, right? This guy's still hanging off the side of the artboard. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to use the same rectangle. So I'm gonna show you something that's called masking. We're gonna mask something. Basically, we're gonna put a mask on top of something to cover an area. So here, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to mask this area off. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the layers panel and I'm gonna click on this little circle. And what that does is it selects that blue shape. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put copy. And it's important in the way that you do it. I'm gonna show you two different ways. I could do one where I have my blue one selected and I could put paste in place. Actually, it went over it. So actually I wasn't expecting that. Why does that happen? I was expecting it to go behind the guy in black. Why didn't that happen? We'll try that again. Oh, I know why it is, because when you do paste and paste, oh, I put paste in front, and that that does put it in front of this. So that's what I meant to do, because then I could show you that, you see how it pasted a new rectangle in front of the rectangle I had? What I want to do is I want to bring that rectangle above my main drawing guide. And you see how this area is hanging out here? What we're gonna do now is we're gonna select over here, and this is, you do this holding down your shift key. So right now I have the blue one selected. I'm gonna hold down my shift key and I'm gonna click on the main drawing. And now both of them are selected. You see how both of them are selected? Now I'm gonna go to Object, Clipping Mask, and just simply put Make. And then boom, it cropped it. Basically, it masked it. It's hiding the part that I don't want to show. And so, like, let's say you don't want that anymore, right? You go back to, you select your object that you masked. And you see over here now, it's called a clip group. It's been clipped. And you select that, and then you go to Object and Clipping Mask, and then Release. But I do want it, so I'm gonna go back to Make. That makes sense. And so again, sometimes it might move stuff. So again, you can move these little layers around. Ooh. So now, right, we're gonna do like this guy. We don't want this guy to be blue. So I'm gonna zoom in. I'm gonna start showing you quick keys. If you hold down, like, I don't know how this works on PCs, but on a Mac, if you hold Command and the space bar, you see the little magnifying glass. And depending on how you go in and out, boom, 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 boom. That's crazy, right? And so what I'm doing now, and if you hold the space bar by itself, the hand comes up and you can move things around. Later on, when you're by yourself, you can test that out and make yourself, when you start working, make yourself comfortable with the application. Try a lot of these things out, and once you know, you get a sense of what's going on, you'll be able to master it. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get into this tool that is, where's this tool? Where is this tool? I always just press P. Where is this tool? There we go. It's this tool right here. So the pen tool, we're gonna use the pen tool. And so again, pen tool's right here. When you go over it, it's called the pen tool. Here, move this. So when the pen tool, you see this comes up, it lets you do that. It's like basically you're able to create a shape with curves in it. And this is definitely one that you're gonna have to kind of get comfortable with. So I'm gonna start, and I selected it. I'm gonna start by like just demoing. Actually gonna, I'm gonna move off of the page and show you over here. So you click, 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 and you have a shape. And then you can change that shape's color. And you can move that shape around. If you use the selection arrow tool, the gray selection tool, you can move it around. And then if you go back here, it starts to become like another shape that you can move within here, right? Now it's behind him. Right, and so I'm gonna show you again, like what that little thing was, the little demo box was showing. You can click and you can click, and then if you click and hold, you hold down the click, like on your mouse, on your, I don't know if you're working on a laptop with a mouse pad. You hold down the click either way. And it brings up this little curvature tool. They're called Bezier tools. This is something that you have to play around with to get comfortable. I've been doing this for, 20 years or so, and so I know how to play with this real well, but something that it's not easy to master. So at the beginning, you'll be like, what's going on, right? And so here's the deal, like I'm trying to select this one, but other stuff gets selected. So here's the deal. Sometimes you can lock stuff. I'm gonna lock this guy. I'm gonna lock my big blue rectangle and even my red rectangle. I'm gonna lock them. And you can always unlock them. What that means is now I can click on this and delete it. And so here, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna get into some real deal stuff. I start by making the shape that's gonna go behind the open area of the mask. And I know it's like, I make it look real easy. But it's gonna take a minute. Like, I mean, people cry when learning this shit, so. But y'all are at Berkeley, so I'll learn in like 5 minutes. All right, so now we have a face, right? And so let's see, I'm gonna, now like again, we're gonna be able to move it behind this guy. See, now homie looks pistachio color. I want him to be a little bit more dark, so let's see. So this is gonna be tricky. I just clicked on the color here. You see, you can click on this little color bar. You can make them like green, you can make them like a Smurf, you can make them perp. Ooh, that color came up real good. You can always fine tune them right here. And so what I have now is the flesh color. But his eyes are flesh colored. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create another little shape here. Go back to the arrow to the pen tool. Make the white of his eyes. We'll do two of them so you can kind of do them at the same time. You see, I'm just doing like straight lines. I'm not doing too much of the curvature here. Whatever is more comfortable for you. Sometimes they're easier to make, but here now these look scary. So now what you do is I'm gonna select both of them. If you hold down shift, you can select multiple objects. And I'm gonna make them white. Now it's gonna look real scary. So I'm like zooming out so you can see it looks scary. But while both of them are selected, you can move, actually here, if you want to select both of them in the layers. Boom. Now he got normal looking eyes, right? This is making sense? It's like coloring. It's like coloring book, except in Illustrator. And so I'm gonna do the mask. So again, right, as I'm doing this, because this is just boring, when you're working on your own poster, right, download this video and just kind of follow along. I rewind it and then like go back and forth and like, until you understand it. I mean, this is what you're doing here is super advanced. Like I'm kind of showing you how to use certain parts of Illustrator, but this is pretty advanced work. So sometimes when you drag your mouse trackpad, it allows you to move your image. So that's helpful sometimes. And you see how now like it's right here, I can't see what's going on there. You can always go to your color that's selected and you can click off, make it that red dash arrow coming through it. That means it's transparent. And so you can see. If you lose it, remember that it's over here in your layers. And if somehow you forget, like all of a sudden you do something and it disappears and you're like, what's going on? Like I lost everything, I lost my life. Click on it over here in the path. Right? And then bring back your pen tool. And then you find the last point where you're at and then click on there. You see, when I highlight it, I don't know if you can see there's a little dash kind of coming through it or a slash. And it allows you to pick off where you were. And so at the bottom is gonna be covered up. So I'm gonna go back. No, you see, I was trying to close it up, right? But that didn't close up. So I'm gonna undo pen. And then I'm like trying to click it right here. And you see when it's selected, it means that it's gonna close it. So now it's closed. So now it's a complete closed shape. And now I'm gonna go over here to the colors. I'm gonna make it black. Now I'm gonna make it like a dark gray. And so again, I'm gonna go to my layers palette. I'm gonna move it back. Make sense? And so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna do a color for the jacket. And here you can be like kind of more crazy. You don't have to be so precise, and I'll show you why right now. I'll make this like he was wearing like a army jacket, so it's gonna be like a dark brown. Not that dark brown. Be more yellow, yeah. Mm. That's cool. I like that brown. So again, we can play with the layers. Now I'm gonna move this one behind everything. But you see how the red bar at the bottom is kind of there? I'll move that one to the front. Oh, you see, now there's this other little area over here. So I'm gonna do another little. Zoom in. Move it up. So the cool thing about Illustrator is whatever color you use was last selected will be the one that gets filled inside your new path. So again, move this back, boom. So one of the things you see how like I'm gonna show you right here, if you zoom in, this red box is a little bit smaller. So when you zoom in, sometimes it's hard because Illustrator allows you to zoom in. We're at like almost, 650%. And so you can move this out a little bit so it matches with the blue. Check on this side. Yeah, you see sometimes like this is a little bit up. So you can, again, you can select these, you can move them around. You can see that's not totally on. But remember, you have to click on the box, you have to click on the shape, and then you have to use your white selection tool up here, direct selection tool. Click on a thing, actually hold down select, click, and you see. Move this one forward. There, so you have to have it in front, click on that little dot with the shift key selected, held down, and then you can move it. You can match it up to there. And then you can move it back behind everything. And there you go. Any questions? About like this area, right? Again, you can always go back in here. And you do something, you're like, well, how am I supposed to fix that, right? So here you go back to the pen tool, and you can add little clicks. So you can add, I'm adding a little piece right there, I'm adding another one right here, another one right here, and another one right here. And I'm gonna use the direct selection tool. I'm gonna click, you see, I'm gonna drag this one. So again, if this one is, if it went too far, you can add little points. If it didn't go out far enough. Use your direct selection tool. Move things in and out. This is a simple poster. I mean, depending on what you're doing, right, you can do different things. One of the things I was thinking, right, we can add like an image. There's a couple things you can do. So let's see. What did I do? So, actually, like earlier, I found some images. I'm gonna go place. Let's see, what image is this? This is the jungle. Oh, no, let's see. Found the mujeres over here. This is a cool one. So I'm gonna place this one. I don't know how much we're gonna be able to see, but yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking. And so I'm gonna move this one. I'm gonna drag in the layers palette behind everybody. For the, let's see, I'm gonna mainly use this. It doesn't look as cool, but I'm gonna use it as a teaching tool here. I'm gonna drop in a photograph. Yeah, move them up actually. Like, oh, here's where we go. I'll move them up. You can see them up here. Not too happy with this, but this is let's see. Last time. There we go. I made it real big, so at least we can see a little bit of them right here. There we go. I'm kind of happy with that. So what I'm gonna do is again, I'm gonna mask this. Y'all remember what masking is, right? I'm gonna make it so only the piece of the photo I want to show is showing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select the blue box that I had in the background. I'm gonna unclick this. I'm gonna click on the rectangle, the blue rectangle that we had in the back. I'm gonna copy. I'm gonna lock this guy back up. And then I'm gonna select the photo. And then I'm gonna go paste in place. And now it's in front of that photo and actually in front of everybody. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select that blue box and then the photo. Using Shift, I click on, again, to show you, I'm gonna click on that photo in the linked file. And then under the rectangle, I'm gonna click that again. Oh, you see, but it selected everything. So actually, you select one and then using Command, you select the rectangle as well, and it lets you select two of them. Just to make sure I explain that right. Click on linked file, which is your photograph, and then Apple Command, click on the rectangle, and you have both of those selected. Now I'm gonna do, again, another clipping mask. I'm gonna mask it, make, and I just have this photo, and then it shows gangster right there. But now that I have that, I'm gonna move this over here. I'm gonna leave it right here. And then I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paste in another copy of that blue rectangle. And so I'm just gonna do paste in front again. And now it's blue on top of it, right? And so actually this is a cool thing you could do right here. You could go into transparency. So again, you could go to window and look for transparency. Mine's already here, so I'm gonna click on this one. Now I'm gonna do multiply. Right, you could do different ones. You could do color burn, you could do lighten. This is where you can start, you could do a screen. I like that one. And so now what I have to do is I have these two boxes selected. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move these all the way to almost to the back. Or to the bottom of the layers palette. And so now we have like a screen back photograph. And although it doesn't look the best on mine because kind of this dude's head so big, you know, depending on your design, this could be useful. And I know you can kind of see this little line up here, so I'm gonna like zoom in. And you know, sometimes it's weird because when you're zoomed out, like you see it, but when you zoom in, you don't see it. So don't worry about it. Sometimes when you see that, it's just that Illustrator is playing tricks on you. Like the Ghetto Boys. Like mom playing tricks on you. So you see where we're at. What's missing? That again? Yes, thank you. I gotta say something. So I'm just gonna do something like simple. And so here's the other tool that we use, a text tool. All right, you click it and then you put hello. I'm gonna click it. And then it says Lorem Ipsum. And so it's real small. So I'm gonna just type in Viva EZLN. And I'm holding down the shift key, so it's all cap lock, it's all, and yeah.
You choose language,
What do you mean?
you to use like, another language, letters.
Yes. Oh, to like what? No. Like what language? Ooh, that's,
Use some of, I use art that's from like the Punjabi organization.
Yeah. yeah, no, I'm in, no, that's really advanced. That has to do more with your language settings on the computer. So yes, you can use it through Illustrator. And is Punjabi, I don't know anything about Punjabi, is that using like, it's using a whole different alphabet, right?
So.
It's a whole different, yeah, it's, oh, I've done that where you copy it from Google Translate and it might work. But I know if you want to use a different language, you usually have to have it set up in your language settings on the computer itself. And I know that like usually with like Chinese, and so it gets a little bit more complicated. But if you copy and paste, I have done that and that does work pretty well. Yeah, so it's more experiment. Always look back to what copied in to what was in Google Translate to make sure it's the same thing. Because I've had that experience where it changed it and then I didn't look and then I showed it to the client and they were like, why does that say? No. Yeah. So what I'm gonna do is, because it's so small, I'm gonna go back to my selection tool. And I'm going to make this bigger. So if you just go like that, you see how it looks all like distorted. I'm gonna undo that. So hold down the shift key while you make it bigger and it'll scale it up correctly. And so it looks like, it's in Marriott Pro. So down here is like where you can look at different salvation, where was that? You might have it down here. URSSTST sub, I don't know, yes. No, I don't have it. I'm gonna use Sans Poster. So the fonts.com. That's where you can look for fonts. And then you got to I'll actually send a tutorial to Pablo as well when I send the other video on how to install them. How many people have PCs in here? A couple? Okay. I'll send both. I'm a very Mac heavy person, so I know Mac, but so you see, all I did was drag it on top, right? And of course, like depending if it's where it's at on your layers palette, right? And then you can change the color as well. Actually, I like white on red, so. Boom.
I'm curious if you could just do this on Photoshop as well, or it has to be on Illustrator.
I like Illustrator. You can do it on Photoshop, but it's a lot more complicated. And I know you might disagree over this.
I don't know how to use Illustrator, sir.
And so we can't argue about it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? And to me, yeah, like, I don't know, to me, I think it's this actually, the way I would say it is that this is what Illustrator is made for. Illustrator is a poster, the way that, I'll give you a total like tangent, the way that Photoshop and Illustrator work are that these are computer applications that are based off of things that people used to do by hand. And so back in the day, there was this thing called a copy camera, where you would make a duplicate of something, right? Like use a photocopy for something, a photocopy machine to copy something. Back in the day, like if you wanted to, this is like, especially if you were a designer, if you wanted to make a blow up of your drawing that you drew on your paper, right? And you wanted to blow that up to be like, 2 by 3 feet, you would use this thing that's called a copy camera. That would basically take a giant, create an image of it, that would take a photograph of it. You would create a negative, then you would create a positive, and then you would use that positive to print a big one. There's basically all stuff you could do in Photoshop. So it's basically mimicking that. And so with Illustrator, very similar. There was things that people would do by hand to create like an advertisement of creating an artboard with like a photograph and text and all these things that you would do like that we just did. And so people would do that using, do that by hand, and then Illustrator was created to do that computer-based. So these are kind of the tools that I use for that. And not to say that using Photoshop is wrong, it's just that as this is the way I learned to do things. And as well, this is also the press-ready way to do it. I'm trying to defend myself here. I'm trying to think it through. Like this is like if you're gonna actually send something to like a professional printer, like there's certain things you need to do to prepare it. Which is funny because that's also changed over the past 20 years, so I'm just rambling now. Any questions? Because where we're at is basically we got a finished poster. But I want to show you something else. The royal we, right? So
Can I take
so I'm gonna show you another thing because this is one thing I like is, let's see, this is my drawing. I think let's try with this one. I'm just gonna show you like something that, so you can drag and drop on a, oh my God. I'm gonna open up this one in Photoshop. And so let's see, I'm gonna record this to. All right. So here's actually kind of going back, kind of circling back. Remember when I, so this one right here is 28 by 15 inches at 72 resolution. Remember what I said, what we want to do is what happens, to see what happens when we click 300 in this one. So it's only 6 by 3. And I'm gonna put that. And I'm gonna click OK. And actually, I'm gonna do this again. I'm gonna go to image size. And because what we're gonna do to this one is it's not as crucial, I'm gonna change it. But I'm gonna click on the resample. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna make this the width. Let's do the height. I'm gonna make it 13. There's random numbers. And I'm clicking OK. It's resampling it, so it's trying to think how to make it bigger. And so you see, you got this image. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to teach y'all how to take a color image, and let's make this black and white. So I'm going to go to grayscale. And then this is kind of similar to what I showed you last time. I'm going to go to shadow and highlights. And I'm just doing the shadow and highlights, and now it pops up the color. Gives it more gray, kind of lines it up. Do that again, actually. And do it twice. Make it twice as no, no, maybe undo that. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go to adjustments, exposure, play with it a little bit. Bring up give it a little bit more contrast. See, I made it a little bit darker, not too dark. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you some of the filters. So there is these filters in here. So again, you go to, now you have your image kind of color corrected is what we would say, right? Now you go to filter gallery. And there's a couple that I like that are real nice, which is already automatically selected, is stamp. And this is kind of showing you what we call a high threshold image, which it goes from being a grayscale image to being like a black and white image. And you can kind of play with how dark it is. You see like this light dark. Here, you can make it really dark. Because we have time, I'm gonna show you like how to do a couple things. So you see how here I'm gonna bring it real light so you can see a lot of this. And so that looks kind of cool. So I'm gonna show you something a little bit advanced because we got time. I'm gonna put cancel. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna put cancel. And here we can also play with layers. So I'm gonna do 2 different layers. I'm actually gonna copy this a couple times. So I'm dragging this down to the plus sign, and I'm gonna drag it again to the plus sign. And we're gonna make 2 different shades. And so I'm gonna do one. I'm gonna do the filter. Again, the filter gallery. And this one is we're gonna use the light one. So I like how you can see the masks in here. I'm gonna click OK. And then I'm going to click that one off, and I'm gonna select this one. I'm gonna go back into the plugin to the filters. Click filter gallery. And here, if you do what's it called? Zoom out. So here, actually down here, you can play with this fit in view, which is also Command 0. Apple 0 is to get you to there. And so I'm gonna make this one darker. And just take this. I'm gonna do that. And I'm gonna click OK. And so now what I'm gonna do, and this is gonna be a little bit kind of confusing, but if you follow along later on, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make two different files. I'm gonna make a light and a dark one. And I'm working from one file here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna save as my first one. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna name it original. Okay, why can't I type? Save as. There we go. Slash original, I know I can spell. Clicking OK. Layers is OK. And so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna do bitmap of both of these, and it's gonna be a little bit confusing because I'm gonna do is I made this one into a bitmap, and I'm gonna do something very specific here. I'm gonna go to save a copy. And I'm gonna save original. It's gonna be now it's gonna be called dark. And that's okay, okay. And so what I did is I saved that as a whole different file. So I still have the one I'm working on, and I'm gonna show you another palette over here. There's a history palette. And so here, this is like, it has a history of all your things you've done that you can undo. So it's basically like undoing here. And so I went back to before I did the bitmap, so I can go back to my layers. And now I'm gonna do this one, which is the light one. Again, bitmap it. We'll go okay. Go okay. Again, save a copy. And then the first one was dark. This one's gonna be called light. I'm putting okay just to save it. And so now, because this is my original, I'm gonna take off that filter thing. So now I have all three of these and I'm gonna save it. So I have, if I wanted to make changes to it later, I can make changes to it. And so now I'm gonna go back to Illustrator. I'm bring it in over here. So this is definitely a drag and drop situation for me. So I have both of these light and dark. I'm gonna select both of them. I'm gonna drag them into here. And then, oh, shit. I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? Ah, the second one, I did something wrong. So I'm gonna open this one. I'm gonna open, oh, I know what I did. I selected the wrong ones. No one said nothing. So now I select these two and drop them in, move over here. And you see how they're just basically right on top of each other, right? And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into the layers palette. And so it's light and dark, right? Actually, I want the light one on top and the dark one on the bottom. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select the dark one first. We'll go to the color palette. I'm gonna do two different colors. I'm gonna do very blues. I like bluish greens. That looks kind of weird. I'm gonna go to the other one. Let's see, I'm gonna actually change this color. I think make it darker. That looks weird because there's all that gray behind it. I'm actually gonna take these into a new window. Ooh, I'm gonna have to do that again because I did not zoom and record that. Wait, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start over. I'm gonna do a new window, a new file, 11 by 17. Now again, I'm gonna bring these back in. Remember, I just drag and drop them. I'm gonna change the size so we can actually see on the white because that was messing me up. So I'm gonna, you can click on these, and if you hold down the shift key, you can resize it, and it'll hold its dimensions. And so there we go. We have two files. Again, what I'm doing, I'm gonna select these two, light and the dark ones. You can't see the other one because this one's hidden behind it. Ah, you see. You see, so this is kind of a way that you can kind of create like a multicolored image. I don't know if this was interesting, but I like playing with this kind of stuff. I think those colors look better. And so you create like what would be a high threshold image with a little bit of color and a little bit more dimension to it. And then if we wanted to, we could like I'm gonna select these two, and we'll cut them, bring them over here. I'm doing a lot of stuff that's gonna be kind of confusing, but I'm gonna create a copy of this. Turn this one off so then we can play around with this one. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look at this one. I'm gonna unlock a lot of stuff. Delete this guy. Ooh, deleted too much. I'm actually gonna go down here and select things. I've locked that one. And then sometimes when you have a lot of this stuff done, you might want to select different things. I'm gonna select a lot of these pieces are of this guy. So you see like all the things that I'm selecting. I'm basically using the pointer tool and I'm holding down the command key so I can select multiple things. And so now you see like, oh, it's basically this guy. And so I'm gonna do this thing called group. So I'm gonna group all this stuff together. And so now like I can move just this guy around with all the shapes intact. And so I'm gonna paste, yes. Now I'm gonna move this guy for a minute. And you can, same thing you could do is you can group these together. Now I'm gonna put this like this, and I'm gonna make this bigger. So now this guy's in front, and I move this guy in front of everything. I'll make them smaller just for purposes of this. And so you see now what we have is this one back here. So I'm gonna do a copy of this rectangle again. Copy it, I'm gonna put it in front of this one. Paste in place. I'm gonna select these. I'll go to object, Clippy mask, make. Now I'm gonna move this guy in front again. That looks kind of cool, right? There we go. So different ways that you can like bring in different elements. And he looks really small, but that's all right. Maybe it's because I know like other people are coming up into focus. We gotta sometimes align stuff and make sure. So I gotta move the rectangle above and then move my text above. And so, you know, it's always good to like have a second line of text. Now I'm thinking about this. I'm gonna make this another one. So I'm copying this. I just made a copy of it. I'm gonna write something else. Something like celebrando. And that's really big, so I'm gonna make it smaller. So you can move stuff. Remember, gotta be in the right arrow so you can move stuff. How many years are we at, Pablo? Is we at 30 years? 230. Yeah, dude, we gotta make sure to do that. Oh man, this is gonna be like, let's see. Oh, this font sucks. I'm gonna put something on the 30 years, it'll be bilingual. Celebrando 30 years. And then, you know, I'm just showing you, you want to do a bit, you know, your primary text, your secondary message, right? It could also just be, you know, you could do 2 lines. It could be celebrando 30 years. That too. Of peace, struggle. And so let's see, I'm gonna make this smaller. Sometimes like this is just a suggestion. You could do it in like English and Spanish. And you could do 2, make them smaller. Yeah. Well, yeah, what else?
Just so we can come.
Yeah, and then we'll come back and then close it up. I think that, what do you think?
Let's take a 10-minute break. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Oh, yeah, yeah, I got it. Let me send it back to you.
I'm sure, thank you.
Yeah. Mm. I'm gonna show a couple things because I've been noticing that some of the drawings that people are bringing up, the scans that people are bringing up, they're, yeah, I'm gonna show, I bet the best to show you, right? When you get in, they're a little bit like that. They're a little bit grainy. Or like this one, when you get in, they're like this. Anybody having that issue?
Yeah.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you here how to do it. So first, this one's upside down. So I'm gonna do is I'm gonna image rotate 180 degrees, boom. Then I'm gonna do a crop it. So I went to this little tool, crop. Just need this homie right here. Boom, cropped. So now we can see this. And so what's going on here is that when it was scanned as not grayscale. And that's okay because we know how to fix it. So what we're gonna do here is once you have it at this point, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a little bit of the, remember, I was saying we could do the levels and we can bring the levels up. Make it a little bit darker. Step one right here. Press OK. Then I'm gonna use the filter. Ooh. Now, and then I'm gonna make a grayscale. And then I'm gonna do the filter gallery. My favorite filter stamp. I'm gonna do, I made fit in screen. And so what I'm gonna use is right here, this one. I'm gonna use the stamp tool. And then, so now what I did is I kind of got, you can move this because it's already like pretty black and white. It's not gonna give you too many options, but what it's gonna do, it's gonna make it, it's gonna take away that, yeah, you see, it doesn't have that pattern anymore. You see, it goes like that, and then after it was like that. Undo, redo, undo, redo. You see? So if that's the way your image looks, that's the way you're gonna do that. And another one, I'm just gonna do this again.
You can just fill in those little white things with a, like.
With the brush, yeah. So here you can use the, like, again, like the eraser question. But here you get the eraser, make sure it's black on the bottom here. And this little tool on the left-hand side, and then boom, oh shit. First, no, sorry, first, we gotta go to bitmap. Bitmap it, and then now you can do that. And I'm gonna show that again on another design, right? So this one, again, has a lot of this texture in it. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go again. We'll start by making a grayscale here instead this time. Go to levels. See how I moved that level? I got rid of a lot of that shadowy stuff. Then I brought this up. You can play with these three little lines. You see right now, what I was trying to get rid of was the stuff that was in the speech bubble. I'm moving back. You see how there was some of that stuff in the speech bubble? Bam, right there. And press OK. And so with this one, let's see. This one's a little bit more solid, so it doesn't have to do any of that. But let's see what happens if we do the filter plugin again. Filter gallery. Right, and so this one is pretty good right there. One of the things that came up here is that I was like, oh, I'm actually now thinking like it's so here's the thing. I've done all this, but one of the things I just noticed is that the image size is a little bit smaller. So this is what I was talking about earlier. And so this is a good example. So this is at 11 by 12 at 72 DPI, which is the resolution. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna be crazy here and I'm gonna make it 300 DPI. See what happens. And so it made it a little bit pixelated, but this is like new Photoshop technology that, doesn't make it as pixelated as it was back in my day. Back in the day, it wasn't this good. Now it's like, oh, it's using AI technology in here, I think. And so once we make it a bitmap, it looks a little bit smoother. And again, even before that, what we can do is go back to our filter gallery. So I'm just gonna, all right, and so since we use the filter, we can bring it up a little bit to get rid of some of these. You see how some of these little things are disappearing? Bring it up, there's little holes are disappearing. Boom. And then again, save it as a bitmap. File, save as. And boom. Make sense? Actually, did I do save as? Yeah, I'm gonna save it as a tip. Make sure you save it as a tip. And I know like a lot of the questions I was getting were like, how do you do this? Well, I'm gonna send the recording right now once I stop this. Is there any other questions? I'm gonna stop the recording and I don't know how can we get it to everybody as soon as possible? Should I send it to you and then you can send it? All right. And big questions, right? And then that's as quick as we can get it. So, any other questions? Is there anything else that comes up?